This week's guest is Soraya Christine, a lady influencing life-altering change, a lilac. She is an author, nonprofit founder, motivational speaker, life coach, ministry group leader, mother, and encourager. Soraya, tell us more about you.
Oh goodness, that was a quick little snippet. We could be here all day. I am. Thank you for having me. Let me say that first and foremost. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a guest today. And gosh, so all of this, who I am, started from me trying to figure out why I had been through so much. And so it just continues to evolve. I spent a lot of time in trauma growing up, and then I needed to figure out who I really was in the midst of all of that. And so um, I had an intimate experience with God on that journey, and He told me that it's not about me.
Mm,
And that kind of spurred something different inside of me. And from there, I realized that, I'm a survivor for a reason. So that's who I am at my core. I believe that I'm one of his strongest soldiers because I've survived quite a bit. And so in that, he allows me to be the person who speaks, life into other people and helps people to heal, and helps just listen sometimes to what people need to say and get off of their chest. And so that's who I am, honestly. Yes, I have a lot of titles. Yes, I'm a minister. I'm actually an ordained pastor. Yes, I'm a life coach. Yes, I'm a published author. I have a master's degree in management and leadership, so many things, right? But at the core, I'm just a person who is being used by God to help other people understand that they can make it through. That's really it. So
no.
that's kind of who I am.
Right, right. No, what a beautiful person to be, right? A beautiful person to go ahead and say yes to who you were created to be, right? Because not everybody does that. Not
Yeah.
everybody is even aware of what they're supposed to be doing. So for you to be aware and then to say yes to it means a lot. And so you exist for others, right? So share with
Yes.
us ways you empower people to realize their greatness by releasing the stigma of past hurts and hangups.
Hmm. Well, I mean, honestly, it's different with everybody. It really depends on what the person themselves is going through. One of the things that it's going to sound really weird for me to say is that I'm appreciative of all of the different experiences that God has allowed me to endure,
Mhm.
only because they allow me to connect with just about everybody. Like, I literally can truly from my heart say I understand when I'm talking to people for the most part because I truly can because I've already been there.
Right.
And so, it was a curse, to me at some point, but it's very much a blessing and on this side of things and being able to kind of help people navigate their issues. So it really depends on the person, um, even just last night, as a matter of fact, let's just start there. Last night, I was talking to a lady who I barely know, personally. We know each other through social media mostly and have interacted maybe a couple times in the community. And I ended up on the phone with her last night, and she was just kind of, unloading the things that she had been dealing with that had been heavy on her. And then she stopped and she paused and she was like, I don't even know why I'm telling you all this. I don't even know you. Like,
Right.
you know? And I'm like, I know I have that effect on people. So, but it's so funny, and it makes me laugh, but it's very true. I've had so many people over the years tell me literally the exact same thing. And honestly, even when I was in my mess, even when I was still unhealed and still angry and still just out here bogged down with all of that, even in that, people still would gravitate to me and literally just tell me their whole life story. And I just be like, wow, okay. And so it's just a gift I believe that God gave me.
Yeah.
Not that I even have to ever say anything, but I remember being a teenager, angry, messed up teenager, sitting on a bus. And somebody came and sat next to me and looked at me, and literally I knew their entire life story by the time we got off the bus. And so that sort of thing has always been who I am. And I don't know if that spurs from, I think that also actually is a blessing and a curse because I'm a fixer
Hmm.
by nature. So I want to help people fix their issues, right? I'm even the type of leader, like in management and different things like that. If you bring me a problem, don't expect me to sit there and pity party with you. Let's find a solution.
Right.
So that's really that has always been who I am. And so even in like the community and things like that, not that I'm not a great listener because I am and I'm very overly compassionate, but at the end of the day, let's find a fix. Let's fix the
Hmm.
problem. But that also opens me up to, more broken people. So even more on intimate relationships and things like that because I have fixer written across my forehead, the
You're attracting.
broken people, yeah, they see it
Hmm.
because it's like neon lights flashing, and so they see it and they come. And that has caused me some issues along the way as well. And so, at the end of the day, just to answer your question, it really depends on the person. Everybody's journey is different. And so the way that I approach, however, I help people is also different.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so with what you just shared, as far as what you're attracting, it being a curse and a blessing, as far as with personal relationships, have you or do you have your own coach, or do you have a therapist? Have you been to therapy? Because I think that that's sometimes parts, or what's missing when people
Yeah.
are doing this work, right? You're doing this work for other people, but you have to balance it, and you do need to
Yes.
put yourself first. So if you're not, then that's definitely something you may want to consider, because you don't
Yeah.
want to constantly keep receiving, right? And you're being depleted. Yeah, you want to kind of
Yeah.
balance that out.
Oh, don't I know it? So yeah, I've gone through that side of it as well. And yes, I have done I'm not actively in therapy right now because even the last therapist that I had, it was the same thing, and this happens
Oh, no.
all the time. She was like my best friend. I ended up being more so her therapist, and I'm like,
uh,
okay, this is crazy. So I have done therapy. I have thankfully some of my friends are also in the coaching space, and so
mhm.
I'm able to bounce things
Bounce
off of
off.
them in a safe space. Yeah, so I've dealt with that. I've dealt with who I am at my core as a fixer. So I am good, thankfully now with the intimate spaces of attracting that
Good.
brokenness.
Good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I really wanted to point that out, not just for you, also for our listeners, right? For people to
Mhm.
know that you could be in doing these type of things, but don't do it alone, right?
Yep.
Have a tribe, have your board of directors, your supporters, your people who you can go and, like you said, you're bouncing things off of one another. Is not meant for us to go and be alone. And as Black women in particular, we often do. We take everything on. We're attracting all these different things. We want to fix everything. And then next thing you know, we look up and we're ragged. So
Yep. It's so
yeah.
true.
And so you've already talked about how, your past and things that you've gone through, getting you struggle through your own past hurts and mental health challenges, and you're passionate about giving back, reaching back, and teaching others how to stop looking back. What has been
Mhm.
your greatest accomplishment doing this work, doing this work?
Hmm. Interesting. That is a great question. You know, I'd have to say two really small things come to my mind. But they were huge things to me. So when my first book came out, way back when, gosh, what year is this? 2023. I think it was published in 2011, I want to say, or 12. And I did a book tour across the East Coast. And when I got back home, because I live in Nevada, when I got back home, I got an email from a young lady who was like 27 or something like that.
Hmm.
And her email just went on to thank me for my book and talk about, how easy of a read it was and all that. But ultimately, she stated that my book helped her to cope with the breast cancer that she was currently at that time going through. And
Mm.
she was struggling trying to figure out how to cope with, having this issue at such a young age and a mom and like all these things. And personally, I've never experienced cancer. Like that's the one thing I can say that I don't have that personal firsthand experience with. And so that to me was huge because that showed me that was my first aha moment of what God told me about it not being about me. And so I was just like floored. Like I couldn't stop crying when I got that email. So that was the first. And then the other one, and there have been many little things along the way, but the other one that really sticks out to me actually just happened this past week. So I've started a conference tour for women recently called Women in Leadership. And we're going through multiple different cities. The very first one was this past Wednesday in the Baltimore area. And there weren't like a tremendous amount of people in the audience, but it was, it was a decent amount. And so I was not really frustrated about that. But even still, when you throw an event, you want it to be packed out, so when it's not, you feel some kind of way. Well, one of the ladies at the end, because I did kind of like a Q&A session at the end and the opportunity for them to give feedback, being that it was the first one. And so, even prior to that, this lady came up to me and she just kind of whispered in my ear and said, "This was amazing. She's never been to an event like this. This was incredible. She wants to attend more events like this. And this was exactly what she needed. And she's so glad that she didn't talk herself out of coming like she initially was, attempting to do, like so many of us do sometimes. And, just that sort of thing. So it just brought tears to my eyes and reminded me that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm on the right track, that this is exactly what God has me to do because there is that one person that needed to hear something that was said. And so those are the two most powerful, very small things that stand out to me in this journey that I've been on for many years now.
No, and you know what? And there are two things that definitely support what you're doing, right? It's reminders or proof or confirmation that you are on a right path, right? You are doing what you were assigned to do. So it's always a
Yes.
great thing when we get that type of feedback. And by the way, I lived in Vegas for 4 years. I actually lived in
Oh,
Cumberland.
oh wow, how cool. Small world.
Yeah, I know. So this podcast is about empowering women of color in elevating their voices. Based off of your experience, what three actions can women of color take to tap into their power and voice?
Mm, gosh, I would say one, forgiveness. That's going to be key because a lot of times we, as women of color, especially, we carry so much on the inside, things that we've dealt with from early on in life, and we hold on to that and we hold on to not forgiving whomever may have caused us harm, but also ourselves. And so I would say that would be the first thing, you know, show some love and some grace to yourself, forgive whomever may have caused you pain in the past, because holding on to that is not going to serve you in any way. Um, After that, I would say, regardless of whatever fear you may feel, and we suffer from different things, one of the biggest ones for me initially was fear of rejection. And I think a lot of people share in that. And so, despite the fear of rejection, despite the fear of failure, despite even sometimes the fear of success, it's so weird that we have that. But despite whatever fear it is that you're feeling, move forward anyway. Let your voice be heard anyway. If there's something down on the inside of you that is begging, screaming, crying, clawing to get out, let it out, because life is too short to live in fear. It's going to be gone before we know it. And we're here for a purpose. And if you keep that purpose to yourself, then what was the purpose, So we need to just kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. I saw something, I can't remember if it was a TV show or what it was. I don't remember what it was. But it was like just count down really quick and just do it. Whatever that do it is, whatever it is, if it's hitting, go on your hitting live on your website, or hitting live on your IG live, or whatever it is, to put the information out there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Just do it. So despite whatever the fear is, just do it. And third, let's see, prayer. I would say pray, pray, and that probably should be first, actually. Pray. If you're a spiritual person, if you have a connection with God, pray and ask for guidance on what it is that you should be doing and who it is that you should be talking to and what that looks like, and allow Him to direct you. And I would say, if you're not a person who believes in God, then tap into whatever it is that drives you, meditate, or whatever that looks like, but tap into something higher than yourself, so that, you don't hold your own self back, and that you can really tap into a power source that is going to keep you running. Because honestly, if you think about, your laptop, for instance, it's going to run for a little while without being plugged in, but eventually it's going to die. It's going to run out of power. And so you have to have it plugged into a power source, and it's going to be the same thing for you. That's it.
Yeah, and you know what, that part about going ahead and pushing live on your
Mm-hmm.
website is pretty much the approach that I took with my podcast. So
Yeah.
back in 2020, I'm like, yeah, I want to do a podcast, but I was hesitant and I wasn't quite sure why. And so two things happened. One, I was speaking to a coach, and he said to me, he's like, you and I can say the same thing to the same audience. However, when it comes from you, it'll resonate. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
people want to hear your voice.
Yes.
Right. And then I started reading a book by Brene Brown. I think it was Daring Greatly. And like the first thing, the caption at the top was about vulnerability. And I'm like, oh, that's what it is. I I'm fearful, of the vulnerability of it not looking a certain way and it not being polished. And so the thing
Yes.
about it is, and what I've learned throughout my journey is that it's not intended for everything to just happen, to be picture perfect, because what's the story in that? What's the testimony? How do you teach someone to duplicate something that just happens? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I recognize all of that. And so the very next day, which was Good Friday of 2020, I Nike'd it and launched my podcast. And so we
Mm-hmm.
are 2023.
Amen. I love it. And you said something about vulnerability, and even
Yeah.
on the other side of that, um, that was initially me. So I told you, when I first started this journey, it was me trying to figure out how to heal myself from all the things, right? And in that, I had been journaling. I had been journaling for years up until that point, trying to figure it out and trying to get all of the stuff up out of me. And I was, kind of slowly doing it. When I was done, I ultimately had like a thick old manuscript, and God told me to publish it.
Okay. There,
And I
look,
was like, what? Publish what?
look
Yeah, I'm
at
not
that.
doing that. I was like, no. I said, this is all my personal, like all my stuff. I'm not getting
So
ready to
you thought.
publish. Yeah, right.
Right.
And he was
So
like, oh,
you
yes, you
thought.
are. And I was like, no, I'm not. I don't even know how to you should have heard this. Or I literally had this argument. I'm like, I don't even know how to publish a book. I don't know no publishers. And I'm just going on like, I'm just like, literally, he's standing in front of me and I'm
Right.
arguing. And he said, oh, okay. And when I tell you, he literally dropped a publisher in my lap, I
Mm.
said, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you ain't playing. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. That's just kind of how. And so that's how that, so I understand the vulnerability side of it from that aspect too, of just like, not wanting, and I think that's a lot of times what we suffer from is like, we don't want to be seen, right? We don't want people to see all of our flaws or see all of our mistakes and our mess ups and our the poor thinking sometimes, and the bad decision making and all the things. And we don't, that's why social media is so fluffy, because we want everybody to see the great, the good. We want everybody to see the filters, but not too many people want to be seen behind the filter. And so for me, that was a behind the filter moment. And I was just like, wow, that took a lot. And so now not that I enjoy telling my story, but I mean, I enjoy telling it in the sense of I know somebody's gonna receive some sort of power from it, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And so, you know what, as often as Black women and other women of color, we do a lot, even too much, right? We do. And we
mhm,
don't always prioritize self and self care. I just
mhm.
recently took a pause in the way of a 2 month social media break. Talk to us about the importance of taking time for ourselves and the power in the pause.
Gee willikers. Yes, indeed. There is there is definitely power in the pause. And so some of the things that I teach on, in fact, as part of this conference tour is dedicated to self-care for that reason. And I think we get so caught up in all of the things, like you said, that we're doing, and we're trying to be all the things to all the people that we lose parts of ourselves, and we lose sight of ourselves and our own health. And so we end up suffering from, you know, mental health issues, physical health issues, because of all the stress that we're enduring and continuing to endure without taking a break and taking a pause to kind of recharge and rejuvenate ourselves. I am grateful that the conversation is happening more today
Mhm,
about self care, and that more people are starting to see the value in taking care of yourself. So, that to me is an amazing thing, and I want to see that continue to grow. But one of the things that I teach people all the time is that you have to be selfish. And we
mhm.
have put so much negative connotation on the word selfish
Yes.
that we look at it now, that word, and turn up our nose. And the reality is, it's not a bad word. We have to be selfish sometimes with ourselves. We have to learn how to say no. We cannot take on every single thing, even though it sounds amazing. I Trust me, that I know personally. I had to write a whole book about that just for my own self, you
Mhm.
know? And so you have to understand that you cannot continue to run. Again, another analogy, your car cannot run continuously without putting gas in it or charging it up or whatever these electric cars do. Without stopping at some point and making those things happen, without refueling it in some way. And it's the same thing for you. You know, eventually your body is going to start manifesting, the problems with you lacking rest. It's going to look like, you know, insomnia. It's going to look like migraines. It's going to look like achy joints and muscles. It's going to look like, worse things
Yeah.
sometimes, where you're going to start having other kinds of problems, and the diabetes and the
Yeah.
fibroids and the strokes sometimes, and the heart attacks, and the anxiety attacks, like all of the things that come because your body is trying to figure out how to handle the stress that you have put it under. And
Mhm.
so, and then the depression sets, there's so many things that happen. And sometimes they happen without us even realize that they're happening until now it's too late. The autoimmune disorders, all kinds of things that come from carrying so much stress. And so it is very, very, very imperative that you do pause, that you do take time for yourself, even if it's, start off once a month by taking, a weekend and doing something special for yourself, or to just get away, unplug from everything and everybody. Because guess what? That thing, that business, that job, that is still going to be there the next day. I
Mhm.
promise you. However, if something happens to you and you can't, move forward because your body decided to work against you at this point, well, guess what? Your job is going to fill your position the next day. I promise you that.
Oh,
And
trust.
so,
Trust. And you know, and I'm up here thinking about how I worked with this woman who at the time she had 40 plus years with the company.
mm,
And she died at work.
yep. See?
It went
Yep.
on, work went on,
Yep.
you know, and so that's why me now, my focus is on living a dream lifestyle, which we'll get into in a
Yes.
moment. But I wanted to you know, talk about dreams deferred. So I honor my late sister, author and poet Soul True, by asking
Mm.
Dreams Deferred, which is the title of one of her books. Please share a dreams deferred moment.
Ooh. I still I still have a couple of deferred dreams. It's so funny that you say that because I actually just posted about this the other day. And very grateful that I'm getting to live out my dreams,
Hmm.
different things. One of them, so earlier this year, so and you're probably familiar with this, being that you lived here. There's a Black Film Festival that happens out here every year.
Girl, no, I didn't even know.
What?
I
Oh
mean,
my
how
gosh.
long has it been going on?
Years now,
Oh yeah.
years. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
years. And so, well, I kind of last minute found out about the fact that they do an acting competition during the
Okay.
Black Film Festival, where the panel is like full of, producers and, like, people who are in that industry. And so I like literally jumped into it last minute because one of my dreams has always been to be an actor. And I just never really had the opportunity to make that happen. And so I was like, I'm gonna enter this competition. And so I entered this competition, mind you, with no preparation. It was truly last minute. I didn't even know what the qualification, like what you had to do in
Right.
order to be in the competition. So I get to the competition not knowing the rules. Mind you, I'm supposed to have had two monologues ready. I had nothing because I had no idea what the requirements were. Nobody had ever told me what the requirements were. So I had to hurry up and learn two monologues. Thankfully, I had gotten there early. So I had to learn two monologues literally right before the competition. And so, but I stayed. I didn't leave. I didn't back out. I stayed and I entered that, I jumped in the competition. And although I didn't win, I still got some really decent feedback. And
Yeah.
so that to me was one. So that's one. I still want to be an actor at some point. I still want to at least act in something. Let's say it that way.
Okay.
And then there is still a show podcast. I'm not sure which way I want to,
Hmm.
want it to go yet, but there is still some form of a show that I want to produce and put out there. So those are my two bigger ones. Pretty
Yeah.
much everything else has been realized. Like I used to dream about owning a phlebotomy school. I've been doing phlebotomy since I was 19. And I actually did get to realize that dream. It just didn't um what is the word? It just wasn't fully successful because I wasn't able to finish getting full licensing.
Okay.
And so, but I did at least realize the dream, like it was provisional, and so I was able to work for a little while in that. So I did technically realize the dream. It just didn't. It just didn't move forward. In the books and all of those other things, I've been on TV and in papers and done all the different things. And so, for the most part, I'm getting to live my dreams. This conference tour is a dream. And I'm grateful, that God is allowing me to live my dreams. So there are still a few more steps, a few more things. When it's the right time, it'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually some of what you're doing, you can just leverage that for that show that you're
Yes.
thinking about. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you already said you're living your dream life. And I empower women of color to live a dream lifestyle. And
Mhm.
so again, you're saying you're living your dream life. What are some other components of your dream life?
I would say I'm getting there. Let's say that.
Okay. Yeah. It's
I'm getting there. Baby steps, I guess. I would say right now, like all the tangibles, like I live in a really, really nice house. Not my dream house, but it's a nice house.
mhm.
Um, Probably the best one I've had so far. Um, just different things like that. I don't have my dream car or anything like that, but I am driving a car. So,
Yeah.
that still to me is a blessing. I get to help people every single day between my career. So my actual career is in finance. So I help people with building wealth for their future and life insurance and stuff like that. So
Okay.
that to me is incredible because it's stuff that we didn't learn,
Right.
in the hood, growing up in the hood, we didn't learn about this kind of stuff.
No.
And so being able to learn it and teach it now is incredible. So I would say that that allows me to be living my dream. And I think I had to take a pause probably about 2 weeks ago and look at where all the things that God has allowed me to do,
Hmm.
in that it allows me to help like the total person. So in the with the books and with becoming a minister, I can help people spiritually as a life coach. I help people, emotionally, and now I'm able to help people financially. And so the last piece of that puzzle is going to be physically. And so that's something that I'm working on, or getting ready to start working on for myself so that I can get myself there so that I can turn around and help other people. And then I will be able to say wholeheartedly that God has allowed me to truly help the total person, in all of the aspects of who we are as human beings. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really it. I think living the dream looks different for everybody,
Yeah, it absolutely
you
does.
know?
Yes. And that's the thing is, and it's for us to take the time to, to dream about the life that we want. And
Mhm,
so for me, like when I am coaching or I have like a 3-step process, is dream, then it's decide slash 3+ slash design, and then drive towards that. And so
mm.
personally, my like number one component is travel. So that is like the number
Yep,
one component of my dream lifestyle. And
yep.
and it's first and foremost, it's a priority. I actually am, you mentioned the film festival. I'm actually going to the Montreal Film Festival, Black
What?
festival tomorrow. And so I had to like, yeah, I got to move around some of these recordings because that's priority for me. Travel is a priority.
Yes,
Yeah.
mine too.
And
I forgot to mention that, but that's one of my priorities too.
mhm.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then I'm also, for me, I'm back in the dream phase of my lifestyle, right? And like you said, like, oh, I don't this, that. It's a continuum, right? It constantly evolves. So you're,
Mm,
you're in it, you're working towards it. So definitely give yourself grace there to know that, right?
mhm,
And then like you said, the cars and the house, that's just parts of it, right?
mhm.
But it's overall, how do you want to live life, right? And the other things are just extras. So before we close, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Mm. Well, you said something earlier that was key. You said that you kind of took a piece of Nike's
Mm-hmm.
motto, and that would just be it. Honestly, just do it, you guys. Like whatever your it is. Again, like I said earlier, life is too short, and I know that you've heard it before. It's just a dash, right? That dash between that birth date and that death date, whatever that is, and none of us know when, where, or how. And so with that being said, you don't have time to waste, you don't have time to wonder, you don't have time to self-doubt, you don't have time to allow those things to hinder you from realizing whatever your dream is. And so whatever that thing is, and make it big, right? Your dream should scare you,
Yeah.
but there is nothing impossible in this world. There is nothing impossible out there. All things can be realized. I'm sure that the things that we're looking at today, somebody thought was impossible at some point, right? And so whatever it is, just do it. Just take the first step. That's all it takes. Start somewhere. Write it down. The Bible says, write the vision and make it plain. That's the first part of the scripture anyway. So start there, right? Like write the vision, make it plain so that it's on paper, you can see it, you can look at it every day, and then you can start to take the steps that it takes to get you to that goal. And
Yep.
that's really it.
Absolutely. And and with that, focus on where you want to get to as opposed to so much on the how.
Yes.
Sometimes when we focus on the how, we put ourselves in a box. And I
Mhm.
learned that in corporate, years ago. I'm like, oh, I want to be a director. And there's like, okay, why? Like, what do you want the work that
Yep.
you're doing to look like? And so when I started looking at that, I'm like, oh, let me focus on that. And then however I get to that is how I get to that. And
Yep.
even now, like I'm like, okay, God, I want to do XYZ. I'm attracted to manifesting this, that, and the other. And I'm like, and I'm open to how you get me there. I do have some suggestions
Right. Right.
about how that can come about. However, I'm open to what you say, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what we definitely have to do, is really focus on the life that you want to live, the things that you want in your life, etc. But the how, leave that kind of open, right? And make sure that you are keeping it open to see that, oh, okay, instead of me going down that particular street, which is where I was headed, oh, you want me to take a right? Okay, cool. Right. And take that right. so
Yep. Yep. That's so good. Absolutely.
so Soraya Christine, I thank you so much for lending your voice to women of color in intimate conversation, and enjoy the rest of
Mhm.
your day.
Thank you, love. You too. Thanks again for having me.
My absolute pleasure.